God Talk Sunday. So I ask a question today. The politics of God. That's the question of the day. The politics of God. I ask, would God be a liberal or a conservative? That's the real question, isn't it? A Democrat or a Republican? Now, I can ask that question rhetorically, but I'll give you the answer from my perspective. Let's begin with the Ten Commandments. I don't have to go down each one of them, but fundamentally, the Democrats have said all of the Ten Commandments are rubbish. Every last one of them is rubbish to the Joe Biden Democrats. Some of the conservatives, some of the Republicans follow the Ten Commandments. So I would have to say that God would be a conservative for sure, probably a hardcore right wing conservative, no doubt, which is why the quote unquote liberals or progressives hate God. Never forget that the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, are you hearing me now? Where's the streaming? Oh, I can't get the streaming here. I assume you're hearing me on YouTube. I assume everything's working on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook. I'll have to check in a minute to see if I'm not talking to myself. Sometimes you don't know. That's the problem. That's the beauty of technology and the nightmare of technology is unless you have people in the room with you who are monitoring what you're doing, you don't know if people are actually hearing you. So I'm going to ask you, can you hear me now? And the question is, if you can, start commenting on YouTube. Let's get the live going on YouTube. I'm going to put it up on this. See, there it is. The Savage Rap, 62 watching. Okay, and there we are. Restream. I'm actually looking at myself while talking, which is crazy. We live in loud and clear. Okay, now I'm going to turn it off. So the topic for today is let's turn off that now that I know you're listening, the politics of God. So I was going through my notes today because this is a huge week for me in my life, of many weeks in my life, which I can reverse now and go back in time and say the biggest moments of my life were connected to birth and death. The death of my father, the death of my mother, the birth of my children. Those are the big moments in my life. The big moments. The biggest moments of my life would be watching a baby born. There's no bigger moment in a man's life. Speak for yourself, I'll speak for mine. When you watch life come from your wife's body and enter this world, you realize what you're here for. Unless you have children, you can't understand that. So I ask again, the politics of God. Obviously, God would be a conservative. He'd have to be a Republican at this point. Of the few Republicans who are anti-war, and there aren't many, most of them have become psychotic, greedy warmongers. This week, as you know, Zelensky the bag man comes to town with a mask on. You know, I have a cartoon in my head of Zelensky. And let me say this very clearly. The Ukrainian people are suffering more than any other people on the planet. 8 million Ukrainians have been forced out of their homeland. 400,000 Ukrainians have been slaughtered. That is a number that's confirmed by verifiable sources, according to Colonel McGregor, who's the greatest man in the whole spectrum of people reporting on this war. And he bases it upon Ukrainian sources, Russian sources, Polish sources, Romanian sources. Think of the number. 400,000 Ukrainian men slaughtered, and Biden doesn't say it's time for peace. Instead, he says it's time for more war. And Stoltenberg, the head of the UN, says the war will go on for a long time. This is a nightmare that we are watching. You look at Fox News, the warmongers Levine and Hannity are for war, and Moloch keeps them on the air. And their biggest star, Tucker Carlson, was against the war, and Moloch threw him off the air. There's so much money involved in the war that it's hard to understand how anything can happen in this world without money. So I'm going through my notes today, and I said, well, what is worth talking about today? So I dig up my old God, Faith, and Reason book. There we are. It's actually my favorite book amongst many books that I've written. And I look at the notes because, as I said to you at the beginning, this is a huge week for me. All of my manuscripts from 1963 until now, all of my writings, all of my published manuscripts, my unpublished manuscripts, My journals, my daily planners, going back many years, have been packed for over a year now. We've been working on them with a major American research university. They're picking them up this Thursday. They send the trucks this Thursday. And I have the boxes up there in one of my places ready to go. And I look at them and I say, this is the product of a man's life's work, my life's work. And I said, wow, that's it. Do you summarize your life by your writings? How do you summarize your life? By your earnings, by your writings, by your children, by it. How do you summarize your life, what it's worth? I don't have an answer for that. Only God can answer that. And so all these boxes, and I think I'm going to later on in this week do a live YouTube of the boxes and show you what's in them, not piece by piece, and show them being picked up by the trucks. And they'll be on permanent display, not on display, permanent storage in this major university, which has the biggest collection of Mark Twain papers in the world. And you say, well, oh, big deal. Yeah, well, it's a big deal. I'm the only member of the American media who is honored by this. It does not matter whether Moloch approves of me. It does not matter whether the degenerates of the San Francisco Chronicle acknowledge that I am the most prominent author in the state of California. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you, my audience, my listeners, my loyal listeners, know who I am and what I've been trying to do for this country and for this world for these some odd years that I've been doing it. So I say, well, okay, today I'm going to do a little something. And for the Jewish people, it's Rosh Hashanah yesterday, the birth of a new year, 5,000, 4,000 some odd years of evolution of a calendar. Say, well, what preceded the Jewish calendar? Certainly there were people on the earth before the Jews came along. They lived too. As you may know, years ago, I was fascinated and studied for a couple of years the Native American peoples. They lived here for 20,000 years without a religion, a Western religion. Who did they worship? The Great Spirit. Were they all idiots? They learned how to live off the land. They learned here they learned to live on the land, the plants and the animals, the earth, moon, and stars, earth, fire, and water. They made war with each other. When they caught the other tribe, they did to each other unimaginable things. Whatever you do, don't create the noble savage in your mind. And I'm not talking about myself. When one tribe caught the other, they would do the most imaginably horrible things to the other tribe's member, like skin them alive and throw them out in the snow to suffer before they died a horrible death. So you can say they were sacred, which they weren't. They were beasts like all of us. And so the point is, man has struggled on this earth, given that we have a bestial nature. And along comes a religion which tries to temper down some of this bestiality. Did it work? No. It didn't work, but at least they tried. So I'm going through my notes to give to the library. They're all there, and I find one last boxes full still that have not been accounted for. And here's one called the God Book. So I was about to throw it in the garbage, figuring there was nothing new in here. And I said, what? He reads our hearts before they beat. Not yet stated. He reads our hearts before they beat. I guess, who was I writing about? Rupert Murdoch? And then I find notes to myself from the book in here and an outline of the God Book. And I say to myself, this is hard to believe that I missed giving this to the library people, the librarians. So I find in the back of one of the pages the following. The word pagan literally means country dweller and was used as a pejorative by Christians once Christianity became the state religion of the Roman Empire against those who persisted in clinging to their traditional religions. Do you see a parallel between the Christian elite's contempt for the country dwellers, quote unquote, with today's American coastal elite's contempt for the deplorables? That was asked of me by an editor. And I found my answer in here because I have questions and answers that didn't make it to the book. That was one of them. And my answer to the pagan question was, did I answer it? No. Did I or didn't I? Here it is. There is an answer right here. Look, see, this is why it has to go in the library. my biographer one day, and it could be next week, it could be next year or 10 years or 20 years from now or longer, will find these notes and say, look what he left out. And here's what I wrote. With regard to the pagans, I think I only have 15 minutes today on this Restream technology. And what's going to happen is when it's over, it'll end itself, and then I'll do another one straight up on YouTube for as long as I want. I don't have an answer to the elites thing in here. I have the here's another one that was asked of me in that sequence. How does the Israelites' escape from bondage in Egypt relate to America's struggle to liberate themselves from the bondage of Washington and the coastal elites? How is it different? My answer was liberation theology is taught by radicals to radicals who become revolutionaries, tyrants, activists like Chavez, he's dead, Mao, Pol Pot, Castro, even Obama. There is no direct biblical relationship between the emerging New World Order or the new Soviet Union, so-called, in America. Okay? The gangs that are running the West today are neo-fascists hiding behind the doxies of liberalism. So this was written in May 27, 2017. The neo-fascists today hiding behind the doxies of liberalism. That would be Biden, Trudeau, the leaders of France, Germany, and so forth. We're living in a very dangerous time. And so then I find other things in here that I thought maybe I could share with you today, like, where is God? I thought I would do that today, but I don't want to do God today. I want to do something else today. And I don't know how much time I have expended with you, 11:51, so I have only 3 minutes with you coming up. And I know that your attention span, the time spent listening on my listeners, is around 12 minutes. The average listening on YouTube is 6 minutes or 5 minutes, if at that, because you're jumping around from thing to thing. I found a talk I gave October 2nd, 2016, a sermon in a synagogue that went over everyone's head. They didn't know what I was talking about. So I stopped doing these things. I decided to have a bigger audience here. And amongst you, there's a percentage that follow what I am saying and enjoy it. So I wrote a thing called, on October 2nd, 2016, The Good Jew. And I'm going to change it to The Good Christian. I'm going to change it one word from Jew to Christian and see how it resonates with you. Tonight's talk I am calling The Good Christian. Where is the good Christian? Are you the good Christian? Am I the good Jew? Where is the good Jew? We all look around. We all know people who make us uncomfortable with their behavior wherever we turn. Christian friends, Christian relatives, Christian spouses, Christian children, maybe ourselves. We see it in the presidential campaign on both sides of the aisle. Remember, this was in 2016. Christian campaign managers. We all know of the corrupt doctor who will misdiagnose a case to increase the cost of treatment. We know of the extra billing in hospitals. We know of the corrupt lawyers, the corrupt accountants. We all know of these people. We look in the Bible and we see Jeremiah screaming about the same thing. We see Isaiah screaming about the same thing. We see this all over in the Bible. We see the same thing over and over again. Isaiah wrote about it. As I said, Jeremiah wrote about it. And I could quote them chapter and verse, but I won't bore you. You can look it up yourself. So I ask again today, as I wrote in 2016, look around, look within yourself. We're all strangers here by and large, I said to the audience. Who is the good Christian? Who is the good Christian? Is there such a thing as a good Christian? I'm not implying that we're all evil. By no means am I doing that. That's not the point. My point is we should all seek to be the good Christian, the good Jew, not the perfect Christian or the perfect Jew. The whole point of the Bible, the whole point of the prophets, the whole point of the teachings, as far as I can tell, is to help us to be better people, to be less corrupt, less wanton, because man is a wild animal. Man has always been a wild creature. None of us are saintly. As Jesus of Nazareth said, and let's not forget he was a Jewish rabbi who was then deified by his followers. As Jesus of Nazareth said, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Well, I am not without sin. I'm not going to cast a stone upon others. I'm just here to ask some questions and maybe give us some hope in this time of total and absolute baseness and corruption. Who is the good Jew? Who is the good Christian? Where is the good Christian? Where is the good Jew? Are you the good Christian? Are you the good Jew? Am I the good Jew? The point is not to seek to be perfect, but only a better person. Now let us pray. So I did that in 2016, and the audience sat there in the Fairmont Hotel, all strangers who came for basically a free meal. And when they were doing these services for free in the Fairmont, you'd get the people visiting town. They heard there was free food and they came. They didn't give 10 cents. And the same thing goes on today at churches and synagogues around the world. They're like children. You ever go to a Chinese restaurant and have those cheap candies at the counter on the checkout? And while people are waiting for takeout food, they'll eat them, gobble them up. Or they pay for the check, eating the free candies because it's free. So it's the same with these free services. People come for a free lox, a free bagel, a free candle, a free service. Human nature is very much that of a child. So here we are again on another new year. Nothing has changed. It's only gotten worse. We have the most corrupt administration in the history of the world, destroying the greatest nation on earth as fast as they can. And I think if you ask them why they're doing it, they wouldn't even know how to answer you. Do you think Blinken would know how to answer you why he's doing what he's doing? Do you think Biden could answer you? Do you think any of the administration could tell you why they're doing this to this country? I couldn't think that. I don't think they could. Awaken all. That's all this meant. The Jews, they blow the ram's horn on Rosh Hashanah, and it was called to awaken the tribe. I guess they were all somnolent in the back of the synagogue or trading seashells in the back of the synagogue or trading coins, Bitcoin in the back of the synagogue. And so they blew the horn to wake them up, shock them awake. That's all it was. Wake up, Moish. Wake up, Moish. Wake up for what? Wake up and fly straight. Well, there we are, my friends. I've given you 17 minutes of my opinion. And coming out soon in November is my expose, Inside the Plot to Destroy America, Savage Republic. Yes, of course, I want you to go on Amazon and crash the Amazon order button. But I'm not ready to promote the book. I'm ready to promote truth, God, and the American way. And on that note, I will pause. I may be back tomorrow with some news, views, and reviews and turn this into a podcast for Tuesday. We have a great interview ready for the Tuesday podcast, but I may substitute this for the Tuesday podcast. They become the most popular. So tonight's sermon is entitled what? Do you remember the title of it? As you got your free candies? What is the title? Is God, let's go back to the title, The Politics of God. Would God be a liberal or a conservative? Democrat or Republican? I'll let you decide who supports the 10 Commandments and who does not. I thank you for listening. God bless America, because where is he? We need him now. Thank you for listening. Bye now. Okay.